Sihiye Mishakeila based on the verses from Parshas Mishpatim. The verse that the Maamar is based on is Sihiye Mishakeila es Misbar Yamachem Alei. There'll be no bereaved or barren women in your land. I'll fill the number of your days. And that follows the verse of Va'avatam esavai elokechem, Averach es nachmacha ve'esmemecha, ve'siresi machla mikirbecha. You shall serve Havaya elokechem your elokim, and he'll bless your bread and your water, and remove illness from your midst. These two verses contain within them the three basic blessings of life: having sustenance, having children, and having health in the best possible way in abundance, etc. Basically, the two unofficial first sections of the Maamar break down what we mentioned as the second pasuk, but is actually the first pasuk chronologically, of serving God. What does it mean to serve God? Does God need our service? Not really, because if he needs, he's not God. So yes, technically God doesn't need our service, but he chooses to delight in our service. Anyways, that's a whole mind-boggling concept that we can't fully comprehend, but so it goes. Until we got to that point where we're saying, well, it kind of depends on which level we're talking about. There's a higher essence, the ultimate essence level of God cares about what all the mitzvahs are going to lead to, which is the refinement of man and creation, and then kind of the dimensions of God that have more of a relationship to creation, they care more about the details of the mitzvahs, because that's going to affect the lights and the vessels. Divine light has to come into the world to sustain it, to nurture it. That it happens through Torah mitzvahs. If something happens to the vessels, God forbid, as in we're not taking care of them, we're not doing the mitzvahs, or someone transgresses or something, God forbid, that's going to puncture, that's going to wreck the vessels, then that light's not going to come through. So the other dimensions of God, whatever that means, that deals with that more. So we say, yes, they care about the details of the mitzvahs, but ultimately, all dimension to say the entirety of God does care about refining man and creation, because that's what we're doing here. That's what the whole point of everything is. So then we got into, well, how does that happen? The realization of refinement of man and creation. That happens through our divine service. So what a divine service looks like. Divine service begins with fear of God. That's going to get us in line. That's going to get us behaving. And that's going to lead to love of God. That's how we're going to hold divine service. Because again, the fear is going to keep us in line. Servant to the master, you put yourself aside. And the love of God is going to motivate us to change. That's how we're going to realize the refinement of man and creation. So it's a double process. I was actually learning something recently where it's like there's two different ways that you kind of approach things. You might have heard this before. It's something that's come up. Think about, for example, your knee is a joint. If someone has to strengthen the knee, you don't strengthen the knee. You strengthen the muscles that are around the knee. That's how you actually make the knee stronger. Versus a particular part of your body, your arm or wrist or whatever, that you can target more specifically. Anything that's a muscle or tendon or a bone, that you could target more specifically than something that, for example, like the knee, which is a joint. There's two kind of ways that we can approach things specifically in our divine service, Torah mitzvahs in general. There's a way to approach things in targeting something specifically, a specific temptation, desire, whatever your specific challenge is. So I'm going to target that specifically. And there's a way of targeting it where you make everything else stronger, so eventually we'll act upon that which is weaker. Kind of like the idea of how as you grow older, you kind of mature out of things. So you don't necessarily have to fight yourself over it anymore. Things that you were like very into, obsessed with as a kid or as a teenager, and then one day you turn around and you don't really care about it. It's not because you necessarily have to challenge yourself on that. It's because as an adult, assumedly you matured out of it. So it's kind of like the access of doing all the good stuff will eventually help to strengthen that which is weaker. There's different pathways about how we could do stuff. Maybe different times are going to call for different things, but there is the general idea, if I can't target a specific temptation or desire right now, I can still strengthen Torah mitzvahs to have an overall effect. Now I'm going to review that after we do those two kind of sections of the Maamar, and we get to the point where we say, okay, that's why divine service requires strenuous effort. It's from the language of tanning hides. Now that we have that whole setup of all the different dimensions of what this first verse means, now we could go back to the verse that the Maamar is based on, that Sihiye Mishakeila there should not be a bereaved or barren woman in your land. We say it's a command or a promise in the sense of our spiritual service and our divine service. That's command to us, that we have control over it. An akar could be somebody who can't conceive either because physically, anatomically, there's something that's missing. We saw for the matriarchs, they literally don't have a womb, so they can't be a receiver. The conception process can't happen. There's nothing to take it in. So what does that look like in spiritual divine service? That's someone who's a full vessel and they can't take in anymore. Someone who's so full of their own self-concerns that nothing could get in. They can't go through the intellectual excitement to lead to the motive process, which is going to take us down to love and fear of God for our divine service. There's different methods of how we, quote unquote, empty the vessel, which we saw originally. That's fear of God is setting the self aside. So all your self-concerns, even, so I don't know if I can do this mitzvah until I fully understand it. No, you have your own intellect, your own understanding, all of it gets set aside. You got to get the job done. There's a mitzvah that has to be done. Otherwise, you can catch up. We're not going to say like, you can only do about what you feel. If I don't feel it in my heart, etc. No, that's not how it goes. Tanya talks about a Beni deliberately acts against what they're feeling in their heart, because a tzaddik has complete love of God and complete hatred of evil. So they see a temptation, desire, anything that's not allowed, and it's disgusting to them. There's not even a pull there. But the Beni, he acts perfectly. Everything he does is in line with Torah mitzvahs. He kind of looks like a tzaddik from the outside, but inside he doesn't have a hatred of evil. Actually, that's kind of cool. Whatever the negative thing is. He acts in contradiction to what his heart is saying. That aligns with this fear of God, the servant to the master thing. Just because my intellect doesn't get it, my heart's not feeling it, you still got to get something done. The servant sets himself aside. That's what we have to be doing in our divine service. So someone who's a full vessel is not someone who's setting himself aside. He's just worried about whatever's going on until his mind is too full. He can't take anything in. The other kind of akara is somebody who everything is in place. It's not that there's anything anatomically or medically that seems to be incorrect, but for whatever reason, the person is not conceiving, which medically is something that nobody can figure it out. Everything is there. Why is the person not conceiving? We don't know. Realistically speaking, it's because the third partner in creation is not partnering. God is not doing the final part, which would make the creation actually happen. And here, what does that look like? The God spark is not there. As in, a person, you have the capacity for the intellectual process leading to the motive process. You might not have the love and fear of God yet, but you have to start acting. It's sowing the light for the righteous. You have to be doing Torah mitzvahs. That will lead you. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't feel God in my life. Well, did you put him there? And have you done anything for him? It's like it's the old joke or story that the guy goes to his rabbi and he's like, I really don't like my wife. I kind of want to get rid of her, but I can't do the whole divorce thing. Blah, blah, blah. What am I supposed to do about it? So the rabbi, in all his infinite wisdom, he's thinking and checking. He says, okay, look, this is what has to be done. You're going to have to make a pledge for a tzedakah. And then when you don't come through on your pledge, then God's going to come for payment. Okay, great. Rabbi, I'm going to give you $10,000. Haha, yay, $10,000. Then wait a couple of weeks and nothing happens. The guy comes back to the rabbi. She's so healthy. She's so fine. Everything's so good. So the rabbi's thinking, he's like, okay, here's what the problem is. Because you don't like her enough, it's not punishment for God to take her from you. You have to start treating her better. You have to start being nice to her. Oh, look, I love her so much. So the guy, he comes home and he's bringing her flowers. He's taking her out. He's doing all these things. And slowly but surely, he actually starts building the relationship again. Then all of a sudden, the wife does get sick. And he goes right to the rabbi like, my wife's sick. What are we supposed to do about it? Well, I guess you're going to have to pay up the donation. But the whole idea is, you see, once he starts acting, then it comes through. So even if you're not there yet, that's why we have part of the idea of Masha Lolishma Balashma. What is not done for the proper reason eventually will come to the right reason. What you're doing is correct. Your Torah mitzvahs, that act is correct. Whether or not you're doing the Torah mitzvahs for the right reason, you're supposed to do it because eventually you come to the right reason, and then you could retroactively elevate everything that wasn't done for the right reason. Or we got to be sowing the light for the righteous. The sowing process has to take place. You have to be bringing God into the picture. That's also, if you guys remember, we had this example that we learned when we were studying Tanya about, there's a story that's told in the Navi. So it's in the book of Prophets where a widow comes to Elisha. Elisha was the successor of Elijah, of Eliyahu Navi. His former student was Elisha. So he's the next big prophet after him, prophesying in the northern kingdom. And she says, my husband passed away, but debtors are coming to take all my stuff, and they're threatening to take my children, my sons. What am I supposed to do? So Elisha says, what do you have in your home? And she says, I've got a little bit of oil. So he says, collect as many vessels as you have, go and borrow as many vessels as you can, fill up the house and start pouring the oil. And she does that, and as long as there's a vessel to put into, the oil keeps flowing. Finally, she runs out of vessels, the oil stops, and then she can take out that oil, then she can sell it, and now she's got plenty of money for whatever she needs. The woman, they say, was actually the widow of Avadia. Avadia was a prophet. Well, he was a minister who got prophecy because he lived in the time of Achav and Jezebel. They were hunting down all the prophets. Elijah's busy telling them, your kingdom's gonna fall, and we don't like what you have to say. Hunt down the prophets. He hid, I think it was like 100 prophets in a cave at his own expense. So he ended up going into debt from that. And then when he passed away, his wife was left with the debt. And then eventually you have the story with Elisha. So Chassidus takes that story and transposes it into spiritual terminology. Who's the wife that's coming? That's the soul. The soul is coming to God and saying, I got nothing left. I'm not feeling it. Everything has been taken from me. I'm so lost. And they're coming after my children, as in, we know the kids, love and fear of God. They're coming after everything. I'm feeling bereft. I'm feeling like I have nothing right now. There's no drive. There's no anything here. The answer is you have to start pouring. You have to start doing. And when you will do, then eventually you'll be able to get everything into alignment. Then you start to act. So that's the second kind of a curse. Somebody who's got to be sowing the life for the righteous, got to be bringing God into it. Then we said, what's the Mishakeila? Mishakeila is somebody who goes through the intellectual process. That's the parents. The parents give birth to children, the motive state, love and fear of God, but it doesn't endure. Mishakeila, someone who buries their young, it's not sustaining, which is part of why tanning the hide is the rigorous process, because we want it to be an everlasting process. That's why it says, there shall not be in your land, in your land, that your will shouldn't get filled up. You shouldn't get to the point of self-satisfaction, because that's going to stagnate you, and it's actually going to send you back, God forbid, to that car stage again of saying you're too full of a vessel, so you can't take in anymore. So we can't ever say, I've done enough. We can't ever say, okay, my divine service is done. I did a bunch of mitzvahs today. So then we saw that taking that to the next level, as Mishakelia, I will fill the number of your days. We have an allotted, very specific amount of time. We only have so much time to get everything done in. So we can't waste it. We can't be squandering. We can't be frivolous with that amount of time. We have to every single day, we got to know, we got to be pressed, pressured, and overwhelmed. That time's ticking. Time's ticking. You got to get stuff done. Now we saw an example of that from Rabbi Menachem Mendel Shneersohn, that before he passed away, students come, he starts crying. He says, I don't know which path they're going to lead me on. I'm going to reward him, going to Gehenna. How could he not have known? We saw examples from the Gemara talking about what a righteous person Rabbi Menachem Mendel Shneersohn was. That 40 years he worked, so that for 40 years he could study, so that for 40 years he could teach. He had a complete life of 120 years. He was the youngest of Hillel Zaken's students, the youngest of all of them, and every single one was so meticulous, they were so thorough in every aspect of Torah. What does it mean he didn't know which way he was going to go? Which is eventually the point of the Maamar, the Rebbe breaks down crying. To say, when someone's going to ask you, what's going on with you? You're going to say, I don't even have time to know what's going on with me. How could I have time to be sitting and pontificating about my state of being when so much has to be done in so short amount of time? Every single second, every single minute we're here, we have to be accountable for it. Even to just say, I was studying my own spiritual state. Who even has time for such things? Who can do that? When our time is so short. And any time we're not using in service of God, it's like we're taking what God has given us and being neglectful and wasteful of it. That leads us to the text. And the verse continues, I will fill the number of your days, as in continuing, there shall not be a Mishakelia or a Kara in your land, and I'll fill the number of your days. So what is that referring to? As we've been discussing, that this is the advice to act upon your soul, basically. How do you make sure that you don't become self-satisfied? You're not a Kara, you're not Mishakelia, but then all of a sudden you become self-satisfied. I've done enough. I found my 100%. You don't go out of the box anymore and you go to the 101 anymore, and then that can send you back in the whole divine service process. How do you make sure you can't be self-satisfied? You can't have inner contentment. So how do you make sure that you always have that feeling of inner discontent to say that I'm never satisfied in my divine service? I always got to keep going. The matter is, when a person's going to meditate and think about the fact that he's only been given a certain amount of days, a set amount of days, as it says in Tehillim, that days have been formed, you only have a certain amount of time. But you don't have less, not more. That every single day, every single hour, every single moment, you got to work on your work, as in you got to work on your divine service to fill your shlichus in this world, to fulfill your purpose, your mission in this world. He's going to be so troubled by this, he's going to be so bothered by the fact that there's only a set amount of time that I got to deal with this, that he's going to have no time to sit and think about these matters, like what are my lofty aspirations? What level am I on right now? I don't know where I'm at. I just know that I got to keep going. I only got a certain amount of time. There's no time to be sitting and contemplating this stuff. Remember, it's very action-driven mind. We got to get stuff done. The way that Rabbi Menachem Mendel was saying it, I don't know which way they're going to be leading me. So we saw everything about Rabbi Menachem Mendel. His whole life he was so busy. Only when he's on his deathbed does he have a moment. They actually have a moment to say, did I do what I was supposed to be doing? I have no idea. The explanations of this, the clarifications on this. He was so preoccupied. He was so bothered, troubled in fulfilling his shlichus, his purpose in the world, that he had no time to be paying attention to levels, to what his level was. I know this is areas as I feel that he's so pressed, pressured, and overwhelmed, as we're saying. What is this? That he's so bothered, he's so immersed in all this, that he's pressed, pressured, and overwhelmed. But in fulfilling his mission in the world, his shlichus in this world, at every day and every hour and every moment, that he doesn't even know, he's not even aware of what's happening with his seichel and his midas. Says, how much have you been refining yourself? Where are you right now? I don't know. We're doing divine service. We don't have time for contemplations of these things. Even more so, definitely not on things that deal with the hidden matters of the soul. He doesn't even know right now the more immediate situations what level you're on, and definitely not on the higher levels. And especially for Rabbi Menachem Mendel, what he could achieve with his own self. I don't know, we're doing stuff. We can understand from this that all the more so, how much more so and even more so, it's not shaykh to him, it's not even connected. It's not thing at all for him to be feeling satisfaction. Self-satisfaction, it's not an option. Because he knows that every moment, every second, that he has to be fulfilling his shlichus in this world. And if 1 second passes, 1 moment passes that he hasn't been doing his divine service, it's not just that he missed a chance to advance and flourish in his work. It's not just that he missed a chance of moving forward. It's not just, you missed the opportunity to be reaching the next level. It's not just that. But even more than that, in this moment that a person has not done his divine service, he has rebelled against the King of Kings, the Holy and Blessed be He, in that he has not fulfilled his shlichus. God put you on this earth for a very specific amount of time, for a very set amount of time, and to use any moment to not do what you're supposed to be doing, that's as if you're rebelling, as in you're taking what God has given you, but you're being negligent of it, being frivolous of it. How can that be? If someone says but I gotta work, I gotta do stuff in the world. Yes, there's a way of doing stuff in the world. And the way of doing stuff in the world can also be part of your mission. That you gotta go to work in a regular kind of job, that you're showing this is how you behave in this kind of work. Wow, even when you do X, you can still represent Judaism godliness, and that's making a kiddush Hashem. So that is part of your shlichus, being honest, respectful, etc., etc. You're showing this is how it's done. Hooray, this is. It's not just that there's no, talking about that person could be rebelling, God forbid, if he doesn't use his time as he's supposed to. So it's not just, that's not fitting for him, that there's no even connection for him to be having a feeling of self-satisfaction. Which literally means in your land, literally in your aspirations, in your own desires and wills and wants. But even more than that, when someone's going to ask him, what is with your artsecha? What is with your aspirations? He's going to cry very bitterly. The bitterness of the soul soul. And this is basically about where the Rebbe starts crying. You can imagine, Mali Retzon, Mali Tainag, Mali Ava, Mali Yira. Vasmir Retzon, Vasmir Tainag, Vasmir Ava, Vasmir Yira. What connection? What is it to me to talk about what is your wants, what are your desires, what is Ava and Yira? Even Ava and Yira, remember, because we said even in spiritual terminologies, even in spiritual self-concerns. So someone's going to ask him, like, how are you doing in your divine service? Bitterly is going to cry. What do you mean you're asking about this kind of stuff? There are things that must be done. Who even knows? How is it possible? How am I able to think on these sort of matters, on matters of levels, on what are your aspirations, on where you're at right now, in this hour that I have to be standing on guard, that I'm going to make sure not even a second is going to pass in this situation, that I'm not going to rebel against God, not going to rebel against the King of Heaven, God forbid, that there should not be a failing, that there should not be any flaw or lack in fulfilling what my shlichus is in this moment. The fact that I'm going to be sitting and contemplating this sorts of stuff when I have stuff to be doing is me not utilizing the time that I have to actually get stuff done. Remember, you're putting your whole self aside to do what you're supposed to be doing. So if you're going to be sitting contemplating your own self, then you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. There are other times for cheshbon and nefesh and stuff. Right now we're talking about getting action done. You got to do it. So when we'll do that, when a person fulfills the command that there will be no Mishakelia or Akar in your land, that you'll make sure that on your part, in spiritual terminologies, to not be Mishakelia, something that the children do not endure, as in Av and Yira, love and fear of God, do not endure, or an Akar, that there not even be an intellectual excitement leading to the motive process of parents giving birth to children. In your land, in your own desires, there will be no self-satisfaction. When you don't say, okay, I've done enough, my divine service is good, I've done enough today for my life, etc. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. You still have so much time left because you're alive. Young retired days have been formed. You have a very set amount of time. So the fact that you are still here, the fact that you are here right now, means that there's still what for you to do. There's much for you to do. You can't be contemplating about, oh, okay, I'm done. I got other things. No. When he does everything in his power, that his divine service is with genuine love and fear that endure. So you really got to be working. Remember, tanning the hides, you got to be working on this all the time. Every minute, you got to be working. Because God forbid to ever be negligent. God forbid to never wholly appreciate the time that we have to do what we're supposed to be doing in the way that we're supposed to do it, without self-satisfaction, that Hashem promises and asks from above that there will not be a Mishakelia or Akar in your land. So remember, he says a command or a promise. When you fulfill your part, when you will do the command part of it, to make sure that you, on a spiritual terms, are not Mishakelia or Akar, that Hashem comes through with his promise that in physical terms, there will not be a Mishakelia or Akar in your land. I mean, so it will be. Your spiritual service will come through, and eventually we'll have the physical blessings come through also. When a person will fulfill the command, so command or promise will fulfill it from the side of a command, that there will not be a Mishakelia or Akar in your land, that you're going to make sure you're going to do everything in your power and your ability. Everybody's got their own level, but you got to maximize your level. You're going to make sure the divine service is going to be with love and fear, true, genuine love and fear. You're really going to work at it, and you're going to make sure that they endure. They have kiyum that they're going to endure. And there will be no self-satisfaction. There's going to be inner discontent in the sense that I always got to be doing more right now, as was mentioned above. As I'm that it's added and it's promised from above that there will not be, in the language of a promise, that there will not be a Mishakelia or Akar in your land. Is it a command or promise? It's both. The command is on your part. You got to do what you got to do, and then Hashem comes through with a promise. I mean, so shall it be.